Session 67 of the Law of One. Let's talk about psychic attack here. Let's begin. In this first part, we're going to cover a lot of psychic attack, and this has to do with what you already know by now, which is the situation with Carla at this point of the channeling, where she was being attacked by a fifth density, negative oriented entity. And this was, of course, Orion affiliation, and the vast majority of the session actually is a conversation about this type of attack, and there are some great things we can get out of this. It's not my preferred type of topic, but this is what we have and this is what we're going to cover, and there's always something useful we can get out of this. Most of the session is going to be this. I think there are some questions at the end. I'm going to have to cover this in 3 parts. Again, it seems because there's about 30 questions here, and those 30 questions are rather long, and there's always something to elaborate out of this. So there's not much to say, only to remind you that there was this psychic attack component to the channeling of the raw material that happened after they started getting deeper and deeper into the questions of the nature of reality, and this of course attracted this negative entity. I have my thoughts about this and I'll share them as we go through, but the thing that Ra says is that when you work with this light, then you attract the opposite, and that is the negative entity in this case, because they were trying to be positive, or they were being positive beings by channeling this information. There's some really golden nuggets here that we're going to cover, but I won't expand this introduction longer. We can go straight into the first question that I have, which is, of course, the first question where Don says, could you first give us the instrument's condition, please? Ra says, the vital energies are more closely aligned with the amount of distortion normal to this entity than previous asking showed. The physical complex energy levels are somewhat less strong than at the previous asking. The psychic attack component is exceptionally strong at this particular nexus. So we have, it's a quick overview. The vital energies are, you see, more closely aligned with the amount of distortion normal to this entity. You see, the vital energies are what really seems to be of most importance, right? We have vital energy and physical energy here as explained by Ra. And part of the vital energies have to do with the physical energy. So, of course, having a strong body, healthy body, helps in you having higher vital energies. But it's not necessary, just a big component of it. Mental energy is also of great importance, and that Carla had strongly, and spiritual as well. And then the next is the psychic attack, which they say is exceptionally strong at this time. Now, this psychic attack is this part of the answer is what probably piques Don's interest. And in question 2, he says, can you describe what you call the psychic attack component and tell me why it is strong at this particular time? Ra says, we shall elect not to retrace previously given information, but rather elect to note that the psychic attack upon this instrument is at a constant level as long as it continues in this particular service. Variations towards the distortion of intensity of attack occur due to the opportunities presented by the entity in any weakness. At this particular nexus, the entity has been dealing with the distortion which you call pain for some time, as you call this measurement, and this has a cumulative weakening effect upon physical energy levels. This creates a particularly favorable target for opportunity, and the entity of which we have previously spoken has taken this opportunity to attempt to be of service in its own way. So, first of all, Ra is asked to describe the attack. They have talked about this attack already, so that's why they say we're not going to repeat what we have said before. We're going to rather, I like to note that the physical attack is at a constant level as long as Carla continues to be of service here. And they go on and saying that variations of the distortion of the attack, of the intensity, are because of the opportunities presented by the entity. This first little part of the paragraph reminds us that the attacks from negative entities, if we can use this language, which I don't like very much, but this is what we have. These negative entities use a weakness that we may have to make their incursion here. Yes? So that specific weakness is what's going to cause the opening for the negative entity to do any work. So that's what Ra is saying, and then they say at this particular time the entity basically has been having pain, and this cumulative weakening effect, which is the pain, has created a favorable target of opportunity for the entity, the negative entity, to attempt to be of service in its own way, which is interesting that they go from attack to saying service in its own way, which is the service to self. This is what they do. So it's a good point. I think that sums it up. And the next part they say, it is fortunate for the ongoing vitality of this contact that the instrument is a strong-willed entity with little tendency towards the distortion called, among your peoples, hysteria, since the dizzying effect of this attack has been constant at times disruptive for several of your diurnal periods. However, this particular entity is adapting well to the situation without undue distortions towards fear. Thus, the psychic attack is not successful, but does have some draining influence upon this instrument. Now, this is a great point, actually, and kudos, of course, to Carla for being so strong-willed in her attempt to be of service and not become fearful, scared, angry, confused, and so on. Because you see, if you can take everything that's happening to you with a touch of grace and appreciation, forget about what your condition may be, or forget about the expectations that you may have about yourself. Just enjoy every single part of your day for what it is. Then you lessen anything that may be happening to you. And I mean, I don't wish to say that we're always being attacked by negative entities. This is why I said at the beginning of this answer that I don't like the term negative entities that much, because just like using the higher self, of using the creator and anything within our language, I'm very subtle with the way I attempt to use my language when explaining spiritual things, because they may allow for us to create, even if it's very faint, the image of a different self other than us. And I must say and remind you that anything that you hear from me has this perception of unity. It is how I'd like to see the world. It's my worldview. And this may not resonate with a lot of people because it's easier to understand as a separate subject, and that's fine. I do use the language that we have, but whenever possible, I try to remind of the unity behind everything. And of course, I'm not just saying, forget anything that happens, roll one, and go through that, escape mechanism. I'm saying that in this case, the negative entity, let's collapse it into ourselves. The negative entity is that possibility that we have within ourselves to allow these separation thoughts, these feelings of separateness. And the negative entity, if you want to see it as a separate being or a separate self, only means a different aspect of your own self. And of course, when you have a weakness in your body, in your mind, then the negative entity or the weakness of you seeing yourself as a whole will be exacerbated. So these things, and this I believe is part of the balancing of the universe. You see, if you polarize too much, the nature of the universe is unpolarized. That's just how it is. The only polarizing aspects of the universe, it's our minds. Our minds are designed to be this way because this is how we as creator can experience reality or the illusion, depending on how you want to see it, right? So in the pursuit of unity, one must not even consider polarization, because polarization is just the different ways in which we can achieve unity. So am I saying that this is possible in third density? Yes, I am saying this because you are not a separate being, once again, that needs to accomplish a sort of polarization in order to become something else. You already are the creator within yourself. And so that's why we're not incomplete in terms of energy centers. We have them all, and we can develop them depending on how we wish. So I prefer the view of, let's call it the top-down view of the one being that we all are. And from there, I like to explore. Vast majority of people prefer the bottom top, which is fine too. It's completely acceptable and feasible to work with. And that would be through we can even call it a tantric approach to things, which is using the body and the mind to achieve this sense of unity. I believe that we can already see directly into the sense of unity, and it's just a different approach. No one is better than the other. I just prefer to speak and view the world this way. It's just my predilection. So, okay, let's move, and I think I cover basically anything else here. Yes, Carla. Let me just emphasize that part that Carla was really good at not caring about those dizziness. If you start worrying about whatever condition you may have, then you get into states of panic or hysteria, like Ross says. But, yep, Carla was fine. She didn't care. She was just so happy to be in this service, and whatever happened to her, she was fine too. So, great example. Question 3. Don says, I will ask if I am correct in this analysis. We would consider that the entity making this so-called attack is offering its service with respect to its distortion and our polarized condition now, so that we may more fully appreciate its polarity. And we are appreciative and thank this entity for its attempt to serve our one creator in bringing to us knowledge in, shall I say, a more complete sense. Is this correct? Ross says, there is no correctness or incorrectness to your statement. It is an expression of a positively polarized and balanced view of negatively polarized actions, which has the effect of debilitating the strength of the negatively polarized actions. Wow. This is a good answer. Well, first of all, Don is asking, it's Don's own analysis to say that the negative entity is providing this experience for them to see the completeness, the wholeness in the creator by seeing both polarities, right? So they're presenting that other polarity that they're trying to, that they're not aware of, right? For them to thank the entity. And so they must be appreciative of this entity for its attempt to serve our one creator in bringing us the knowledge of a more complete sense. You see, like seeing the whole. And so Ra's answer needs to be read in detail. They say there is no correctness or incorrectness to your statement because it's an opinion. It's your own view. It's like saying, is it correct that I should like red instead of blue? We can say it's not correct or incorrect. Is what you decide to see it. You know, you like blue or do you like red? You know, that's up to you. So they say now because they're speaking of balance here, of course, of how to see this negative incursion in the contact. It is an expression of a positively polarized and balanced view of negatively polarized actions, which has the effect of debilitating the strength of the negatively polarized actions. So basically, it's the expression of a positively polarized and balanced perception that debilitates the negatively polarized actions. We have to see negatively polarized actions from a positively polarized, which means unity and balance. That's the key word here, balance. Because positive, we can confuse with simply being loving. Oh, just loving. You see, positively polarized does not mean loving. Positively polarized means in search of unity, in view of unity. Only in this view of unity can you actually balance the negatively polarized ones. You see, because if you're seeking service to others and you see service to self, which is very prevalent in our society, then you're caught in the trap of being not wise enough to see that there is a need, there is a balance to this seeking of unity by the seeking of separation, which is the negatively polarized. So it's almost as if you don't really have an agenda, you don't have a plan, you don't have a direction specific to how things should be, but rather that you see things as they are and you see everything balanced and complete. So it's not an opposition of the negative, and it is not an encouragement of the negative or the positive either. You see, it's simply an appreciation of everything. That's why they say, and I mean, this is, to me, this is fifth to sixth density wisdom when they say balance, a positively polarized and balanced view of negatively polarized actions, which has the effect of debilitating the strength of the attacks, let's just put it that way, or anything else. So this starts to pave the road into the other questions, and I love this answer actually. So question 4, Don says, we would welcome the services of the entity who uses, and I will use the misnomer, you might say, of attack, since I do not consider this an attack but an offering of service. And we welcome this offering of service, but we would be able, I believe, to make more full use of the service if it were not physically disabling the instrument in a minor way. For with a greater physical ability, she would be able to more appreciate the service. This is a long question, by the way. Don continues and says, "We would greatly appreciate it if the service was carried on in some manner which would welcome in even greater love than at present. This, I assume, would be some service that would not include the dizzying effect. I am trying to understand the mechanisms of this service by the entity that seems to be constantly with us, and I'm trying to understand the origin of this entity and the mechanism of greeting us. I will make a statement that is probably not only incorrect, but is a function of my extreme limitation in understanding the other densities and how they work." By the way, I believe the answer here is going to be that is substantially correct. So let's just finish up reading Don. "I am guessing that this particular entity is a member of the Orion Confederation and is possibly or possibly not incarnate in a body of the appropriate density, which I assume is the fifth, and by mental discipline he has been able to project a portion, if not all, of his consciousness to our coordinates, you might say. Here, and it is possibly one of the 7 bodies that make up his mind-body-spirit complex. Is any of this correct, and can you tell me what is correct or incorrect about that statement?" Ross simply says this statement is substantially correct. Thank you, Ra. Now, they're going to elaborate a little bit more on this. It's a long question from Don, and exposition, I would say. Let me put into context, into my context, what Don is saying here. So, Don is saying, okay, so let's say I appreciate their efforts into being of service in whatever way they do, the negative entities. But, we would be able to serve better if they wouldn't be debilitating us, with Carla and all. So, if we could minimize that, right? And that's where he's going to, because he's saying like, yeah, I appreciate it. It's awesome that they're serving the Creator. What else did they say? Or he said, we would appreciate all of that, but it's causing issues. And you know what? We would probably serve better if she wasn't that dizzy and all these problems. Then he goes into, it's funny because Don says, and he repeats Ra's words about the misnomer of using understanding in this density. So he says, I know we don't understand anything, but I'm trying to understand the mechanism of the service by the entity that seems to be constantly with us, and I'm trying to understand the origin of this entity and the mechanism of greeting us. Ra is going to satisfy these answers or these questions, but I have my own opinions, which I'll share too. Then, Don's statement is basically that there is an entity of fifth density origin that is projecting itself from its own home density down to third density, or into third density, I should say, not down, but into third density, so that it may do, its own shenanigans. And then it goes into all of that. Now, Ra simply says that this statement is substantially correct. The statement that Don mentioned at the end, right? The rest was just Don talking about, we see that they are doing all of this, but we would be better suited for service than if they wouldn't be doing this. So that's where he's trying to get, trying to see how they can continue doing this without rejecting the entity, because that would be rejecting an aspect of themselves, but also not allowing them to do their thing because it was debilitating them. So it was like a sort of conundrum where Don was. And so, again, this is all going to resolve itself much better in the next questions. So, question 5, Don says, would you rather not give me information as to the specifics of my statement? And Ross says, we did not perceive a query in further detail. Please re-question. So Don says, which body, with respect to the colors, does the entity use to travel to us? And Ra says, well, that I can answer. Ra says, this query is not particularly simple to answer due to the trans-dimensional nature not only of space-time to time-space, but from density to density. The time-space light or fifth density body is used while the space-time fifth density body remains in fifth density. The assumption that the consciousness is projected thereby is correct. The assumption that this conscious vehicle attached to the space-time fifth density physical complex is that vehicle which works in this particular service is correct. So what's happening here? We're going to work better with the questions that Don has. I mean, the initial long statement that he did, and now he's asking this particular part of his question before, where he says, I want to know how this works. How does the fifth density come here and do their thing? Ra says that, first of all, that it's not simple to answer due to the transdimensional nature, not only of space-time to time-space, but from density to density. However, they do give us an explanation, which is, this is how I see it. Okay, so we have fifth density. Okay, and you know that every density has a space-time portion and a time-space portion. Okay, the space-time is where the physical body is, and the time-space is where, let's just call it, the more energetic body resides, the one that is being balanced all the time, that is being worked upon. This is like the prototype of the logos in a specific form, which is, there are infinite amount of forms, but it has taken that form into the configuration of energy centers. That's what's residing in time space. Now, this means literally that every density has its own incarnation. Incarnation here is very dense in matter. Then in fourth density, it's a little bit more subtle, more light. Then in fifth density, it's approaching almost all light. And then in sixth density, it becomes pure light. But all of these incarnations have a body. This body gets recycled. And just like we die here, they sort of die, which is more a transformation than our physical perception of death, which is just, final. People die. It's a transformation. That's why in spirituality you hear death as transformation. So in this case, we're talking about transformation. Now, another facet of higher density incarnations is that you're more in touch with your true self, meaning that your true self can be communicated with in time space. And that's what meditation is about. That's what dreams are about. That's what visions and trips of all kinds are producing in the mind, because the mind sort of resides in time space. It's the link between these two portals, or the link between these two dimensions. So you use the mind to go back into that. Now, meditation is very different in higher densities. So what is happening here is that the fifth density entity in its body goes into meditation, or astral travel, as you prefer. And there is, of course, and this is where I guess Ra has difficulty trying to explain the transdimensional aspect of the projection of the entity, right? Going transdimensional. I guess it's difficult to explain that sort of. It's almost like an astral projection, right, into its own self. Like, how can it embody the time-space body that it really is? And that's the true body. How can it go into that? That's what Ra probably doesn't want to explain and can't really explain. but also from density to density. How does it project itself into third density? And so it does that. It doesn't matter. That's what they say. What matters is that they go from their body in fifth density to their light body in time space. Fifth density space time, they go into fifth density time space and then project themselves into third density time space so they can pester with space time third density incarnation. I hope that makes sense because I'm trying to make you visualize the whole thing. But yeah, you basically go into meditation in fifth density so you can travel through the densities and then do your dirty work in third density. The assumption that the consciousness is projected. There's a lot of wind. I hope I don't lose power here. The assumption that this conscious vehicle attached to the space-time fifth density physical complex is that vehicle which works in this particular service is correct. Yes. Yes, the assumption that this conscious vehicle attached to the space-time, you see, the conscious vehicle is the one in time-space. That's the one that they're using for their work. And Ra is saying that this is true. So they're basically saying the assumption that this time-space body attached to the space-time fifth density physical complex is the vehicle that they use for work is correct. So that is true. Now, we go to question 7. Don says, I undoubtedly will ask several very uninformed and poor questions. However, I was trying to understand certain concepts having to do with the illusion, I shall say, of the polarization that seems to exist at certain density levels in the creation, and how can the mechanism of interaction of consciousness. It is a very difficult subject for me, and therefore I ask your forgiveness for my poor questions, but it seems to me that the fifth density entity is attracted in some way to our group by the polarization of this group, which acts somehow as a beacon to the entity. Am I correct? Ra says, this is in substance correct, but the efforts of this entity are put forward only reluctantly. The usual attempts upon positively oriented entities or groups of entities are made, as we have said, by minions of the fifth density Orion leaders. These are fourth density. The normal gambit of such fourth density attack is the tempting of the entity or group of entities away from total polarization towards service to others and towards the aggrandizement of self or of social organizations with which the self identifies. Okay, there's more. I'll read this and continue reading. In the case of this particular group, each was given a full range of temptations to cease being of service to each other and to the one infinite creator. Each entity declined these choices and instead continued with no significant deviations from the desire for a purely other self-service orientation, which is the positive path. So this is a recap into how the Orion Confederation, I should call it the Orion Corporation. It's a pity that they didn't use that word here in the raw material. I think it's a beautiful one, because the corporation always uses its minions to do its work. You never see a manager doing the work of an employee. Never. I mean, I have seen them. I know. But these are positive beings. They're not, trust me, these managers are not going up in position. Yeah, they reach a ceiling when it comes to this because they do get involved with the work. And to go up, in the corporate ladder, you just have to be good at delegating. This is what the fifth density Orion leaders do. They delegate the work to those lower than them at fourth density. So, let me check Don's question again. Uninformed and poor questions. Polarization that seems to exist at certain density levels in the creation. Yes, that's what causes the answer from Ra. Yeah, okay. So all Don's question was trying to understand how this works. because they're a beacon of light, of course. And that beacon of light is what Ra is saying, that they didn't accept the temptations of the fourth density. And that's what they're going to cover, I think, in the next paragraph. But in essence, what was happening is that fourth density goes and gives the temptations for anybody who's doing light work. They give temptations of, become important. Be big. You can make it in this world. You're striving towards the good path. So go do this. Control people. Create this. They didn't even have to go to those extents. There are so many ways in which they can aggrandize the ego, right? But that's what they do. The four density work seems to be just temptations to make the person egocentric, to make them more, to follow an agenda, to follow a cult, to follow something. And they didn't care. These three souls called Don, Carla, and Jim, they didn't care. They said, no, thank you. That's all good and well, all well and good, but I don't care. And that's what Ra says. In this case of this particular group, each was given a full range of temptations to cease being of service to each other and to the one infinite creator. Well, I must also say that this also speaks of the temptations of giving, of course, specific advice and trying to tell people, what to do, when things are going to happen and what's going to happen, all these predictions and nonsense that a lot of people get into. This is also fourth density work. That's how they discredit the information. And so they didn't follow any of that. They could have keep asking Ra, what's going to happen in the year 2000? What's going to happen in the year 99, or what's going to happen in 2012, and so on. That's where Ra would have said, like, sorry, can't talk about that. So you're inviting negative entities to answer for you. So that didn't happen, of course. Each entity declined these choices and instead continued with no significant deviations. There's always some deviations, but not significant, from the desire to be positive, basically. So the last part of this answer, they say, at this point, one of the fifth density entities overseeing such detuning processes determined that it would be necessary to terminate the group by what you might call magical means, as you understand in ritual magic. We have previously discussed the potential for the removal of one of this group by such attack, and have noted that by far the most vulnerable is this instrument due to its pre-incarnative physical complex distortions. So when all else fails, the manager comes into the room and says, all right, let's finish this project once and for all. You see, this is where they try to sabotage and boycott the whole operation. And what better to do it than to, in this case, defunding it. I think I'm running short here with the manager explanation, but maybe the CEO. Let's just defund the project. No more of this. You guys are trying to do something too good for the world. This is not profitable for the corporation. So, yeah, it's the detuning that they're trying to do with fourth density. That detuning is, if you're trying to bring higher wisdom, knowledge, understanding of this reality to a planet, just take a look at this. This planet has been very confused with all the religions and so on. And Orion loves this. Orion is right there next to the Pope and next to the other and next to, the rabbi and next to the other corrupt religious leaders. Oh, they're right there. They're just enjoying the separation and, all the rules and the commandments and everything that they can continue having in this reality for people not to wake up to their true being. And so having all this rite of passages and only the selected few, mostly men, of course, because women are not valuable enough for this. This is the old thinking, but it was there too, right? So, and I dare say that these people are not negative. The people doing this, maybe the Pope, I don't know. Can't speak for the Pope. I'm sorry, Mr. Pope. I don't know. Maybe they're not. I don't think so. They would be, maybe. I don't know. Who cares? The point is that they don't even have to be negative. They can be so diluted into this, way of providing the truth with this sacred text and, my interpretation of it, which this is where you see that the Bible now, not the Bible, but the church is changing rapidly because they know that they have to adapt to the demands of the world. So they can no longer be completely negative against women and to gay people and all of this. So they're trying their best to be now socially acceptable, politically correct, you might say. But in any case, you see, this is how they detune people. They always make them, they don't have to make them negative. They just have to move their material into the negative side. Christianity, for example. My God, what a beautiful philosophy that is at its core, if it still remains in this world, which it still remains. But it is a beautiful philosophy, or scientific method, or spirituality, or whatever. It's a beautiful essence. But it has been detuned tremendously. Even Buddhism, it has been detuned in some ways. On certain, there's people who worship the Buddha, the image of the Buddha. In Buddhism, nobody cares. They're just like, all right, whatever. That's what they want to do. There's nobody saying like, oh, you shouldn't. I mean, if you talk sense to people, then you might say like, yeah, maybe not necessary, but if you want to do it, go ahead. You're free. You're the creator, so who cares? But yeah, there's always some sort of deviation. And so that's what they're talking about here. So because they can't do it through detuning, then the manager comes over and says, enough, we're going to remove it. And that's what they do with the negative, forgive me. Well, with the weakness of Carla, her weaknesses in body, that's what they were trying to do. Just kill Carla. That's it. It finishes the job. But they couldn't. Question 8. Don says, in order for this group to be fully in service to the Creator, since we recognize this fifth density entity as the Creator, we must also attempt to serve in any way we can this entity. Is it possible for you to communicate to us the desires of this entity, if there are any, in addition to simply ceasing the reception and dissemination of that which you provide for us? Ra says this entity has two desires. The first and foremost is to, shall we say, misplace one or more of this group in a negative orientation so that it may choose to be of service along the path of service itself. The objective, which must precede this, is the termination of the physical complex viability of one of this group, while the mind-body-spirit complex is within a controllable configuration. My God. Okay. May we say that although we of Ra have limited understanding, it is our belief that sending this entity love and light with each of the group, which each of the group is doing, is the most helpful catalyst which the group may offer to this entity. I love that they say that this is catalyst for the other entity. That's a beautiful part, actually. So here's a paradox that Don is facing. I want to be of service to the negative entity, because if I'm not of service to the negative entity, then I'm not being service to others, right? But if I am of service to this negative entity and give them what they want, Why do I have to give them? Right? Because it seems paradoxical to me. That's what's going on in Don's mind. That's why he says, in order for this group to be fully in service to the creator, since we recognize that this fifth density entity is the creator, right? We must serve the creator always. We must also attempt to serve in any way we can. Is it possible for you to tell us, in addition to ceasing the contact, like what else can we do? Can we distract them with some snack? Some spiritual snack, some catalyst? And that's the catalyst that actually Ra refers to at the end. But how can we serve him? So Ra says that the first and foremost is, this is the desire that the entity has. The first and foremost is to misplace the group in a negative orientation so that it may choose to be of service along the path of service to self. Basically, we see that you're very strong. We see that you're very good at this. Oh man, does this ring a bell in our world? You know, when people become really good at something, I won't mention any names, but historically and in actuality, there are many people who become really good at what they're saying, and what they're inventing too, and what they are producing for the world. Their creation, their gift to the world becomes so beautiful. You know, look at the internet in the past couple of decades and all the things that we have created there. And now look at how many of these geniuses who create these things end up serving the elites. They end up serving those who want to control you, those who want to survey your actions. All this technological advancement has not come from negative entities. They have manipulated those who have created so they can be in control of that technology, right? So you can see that all they want is to get that power for themselves without doing much. Just, causing fear. That's the way in which we work here in third density. You cause fear in people and they'll do anything. This is why you see the repeated method, which is, create a problem. If you can create a problem and provide the solution, my God, don't you have business here? Of course you do. You have a lot of business, because people would say, I bought into the problem and now I need the solution. Who has it? Oh, you yourself? Great. So the whole thing that you need to do is, it's like, I poison the water in the village and I provide the new water, because guess what? My well is the one that is not contaminated. So everybody's going to come and buy my water. That is how it works. Of course, we have gone a lot more creative and audacious in our attempts to do this in third density. But this is what's happening. We just want to take control over those things that people have. Okay, so analogies to the side. Ra says that this is what they want. They want to bring one of these group or more to the negative orientation so that they can serve along this path. If Don, Carla, and Jim could serve along the negative path, that would be awesome for them. The objective, which must precede this, is the termination of the physical complex, viability of one of this group, while the mind-body-spirit complex is within a controllable configuration. I think they will explore this here or somewhere else. I think this is where they go into the negative. Maybe not, I forget. But this is another thing that they want to do. Not only do they want to control them, but they want to basically kill them in a controllable way. This happened at a certain point. Did I talk about that? I think that was in a previous session where I mentioned, or they talked about how Carla was in a susceptible position when she was channeling Latui in a Sunday channeling that they did, group channeling, which they continue to do to this day, the guys at LNL Research. And so, they almost displaced Carla into the negative time space, which is really what they wanted to do. That's a little bit more complex. I don't know if I want to get into that. But yeah, they wanted to kill Carla and get her into negative time space so she can incarnate there and be of service to self in their own corporation. Now, I think they will cover that here. I forget. I'm sorry. And so Ra finishes up with saying that it is their understanding, limited as it is, that sending love light to this entity is the best catalyst they can provide to this negative entity. So what does that mean? Sending love and light. I guess in the simplest way we can see this is that first, you don't reject it. You welcome it as part of you. Contrary to what a lot of people say, oh, you need to banish these entities, you need to push them away. When you do that, what happens within your psyche? I mean, I don't mean that you're going to, burn sage around your house and, I'm just going to get rid of him. Oof, go away. Why are they coming to you anyways? Why do you need to burn sage? I'm not saying don't burn sage, but I'm saying, why are you attracting them? Go to your psyche. And you see, when you keep doing this, you're telling yourself that you don't want these entities. What if you welcome them? If you welcome them and say, it's okay. You're fine here. You're loved here. Find that love too. Don't just say, I'm sending you love and light. I'm sending you love and light so you can go away. You're not burning metaphysical sage with love and light. You are appreciating their own existence. This is what Don meant, by the recognition that this negative entity is the creator. So, yeah, that's fine. You can be the creator. In fact, I'll give you a better example. When people come and they want to convince you to something, and you don't just reject them, you just say, I thank you, I appreciate your effort, but I'm not interested. Sort of like that. That's a kind of love light that you give to people. It's the kind of love light you give to negative entities. Just saying, I appreciate what you do. I truly do. I appreciate you existing, because otherwise there wouldn't be any light or positive path, and I wouldn't have this contrast. Thank you. You see, you don't have to say this with words. You just have to feel it. And what is there left for them to do? Nothing. What are they going to do? So, let's continue on. I think I want to cover at least 2-3 more questions. Don says in question 9, we find continue if you wish to continue with it. I guess he interrupted Ra. Ra finishes and says, we were about to note that this entity has been as neutralized as possible, in our estimation, by this love offering, and thus its continued presence is perhaps the understandable limit for each polarity of the various views of service which each may render to the other. So, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say here. It has been neutralized by their continued way of service. That's fine. We go to the next question. Question 10, Don says, we have a paradoxical situation in that in order to fully serve the Creator at this level, in the polarized section, you might say, of the creation, we have requests from those whom we serve in this density for raw information. In fact, I just had one by telephone a short while ago. However, we have requests from, in this particular case, another density, not to disseminate this information. We have the Creator, in fact, requesting two seemingly opposite activities of this group. It would be very helpful if we could reach a condition of full, total, complete service in such a way that we were, by every thought and activity, serving the Creator to the very best of our ability. It is, or is it possible for you to solve, or possible for the fifth density entity who offers its service to solve the paradox that I have observed? Ra says, it is quite possible. Gotta love Ra. Your question is if it's possible? Yes, it is. Don says in question 11, then how could we solve this paradox? Alright, let me take a step here into the question. This is what I alluded to before when I mentioned that they were, or Don was, in a sense of paradox, trying to serve the Creator in two different ways. And this is going to give us the final answer for this video. But Don is recognizing this. See, he's saying, all right, how am I supposed to fully serve the Creator if I have the negatives telling me something and then the positive telling me another? I can't serve, both. That is the choice, the decision that you make here. See, the sacrifice of the third density entity. The illusory sacrifice. It's so beautiful. The whole creation is so beautiful. This whole illusion of I exist as a separate body allows this to happen. This couldn't happen in another density. You would be so aware of everything else that you just couldn't. So, all right, how do we solve this paradox, Ra? How do we actually serve the negatives and the positives? Because they're both the Creator. How do we do this? I have my own opinions here, by the way, which I'll comment, of course. But Ra says, consider, if you will, that you have no ability not to serve the Creator, since all is the Creator. In your individual growth patterns appear the basic third density choice. Further, there are overlaid memories of the positive polarizations of your home density. Thus, your particular orientation is strongly polarized towards service to others and has attained wisdom as well as compassion. You do not have merely two opposite requests for service. You will find an infinite array of contradictory requests for information or lack of information from this source if you listen carefully to those whose voices you may hear. This is all one voice to which you resonate upon a certain frequency. This frequency determines your choice of service to the one Creator. As it happens, this group's vibratory patterns and those of Ra are compatible and enable us to speak through this instrument with your support. This is a function of free will. Wow. I could speak for hours on this. I'm not finished, by the way. This is a long answer from Ra. Let's see how long it is. We have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 3 more relevant paragraphs. So let's start here and give a nice ending to this video. You see, the first mistake in Don's perception is to believe that you are serving the Creator in separate ways. This is not so. And as Ra says, consider that you have no ability but to serve the Creator. The Creator is one, and you can only serve it, him, she, whatever. You can only serve it, or serve him. I'll call it him. Who cares? You can serve the Creator by simply serving. As long, of course, as you decide to become polarized, right? That's the first choice. And see how Ra says, in your individual growth patterns, in the individual pattern of Don, there appears this basic third density choice. You have to choose. But Don has been already polarized in other densities. He's a wanderer. So what happens? He's already, guided towards positive polarizations. Plus, they say, thus your particular orientation is strongly polarized towards service to others and has attained wisdom as well as compassion. So, you see, you want to do this. You're already in the choice of the positive path. You don't have two different or opposite requests for service. You will find an infinite array of contradictory requests for information or lack of information from this source if you listen carefully to those whose voices you may hear. This sounds a little confusing, but this source seems to me the creator, right? So you want different types and requests of information. This is all one voice, yes, which you may resonate on a certain frequency. So the creator speaks different voices, especially the negative one, the negative and the positive ones. That's the creator. So you may listen to it depending on how you feel. This is why polarization is important. This is the whole point of polarization, for you to follow a choice. And so we're speaking again at the basic level of third density, which is the choice of polarization or polarity. This frequency determines your choice of service to the one creator. I would even say that this frequency determines your path back to the one creator. As it happens, this group's vibratory patterns and those of Ra are compatible and enable us to speak through this instrument with your support. This is only partly, or they're mentioning this because Don said at some point that, they have those of Ra, right? He says, we have requests from those whom we serve in this density for Ra's information. You see, so they are in request to channel Ra. Let's put it that way. The collective consciousness asked them to channel Ra. And so Ra says, well, we can talk to you because your frequency or vibration is similar to ours, so we can speak. It's almost like the radio is tuned to that specific frequency, so they can speak. So this is a function of free will, of course, because they are deciding to do that. They as NLL research. And Ra, of course, obliges and says, let's talk. So the next part, let's get into that. They say, a portion, seemingly, of the Creator rejoices at your choice to question us regarding the evolution of spirit. A seemingly separate portion would wish for multitudinous answers to a great range of queries for a specific nature. Another seemingly separate group of your peoples would wish this correspondence through this instrument to cease, feeling it to be of negative nature. Upon the many other planes of existence, there are those whose every fiber rejoices at your service, and those, such as the entity of whom you have been speaking, which wish only to terminate the life upon the third density plane of this instrument. All are the Creator. There is one vast panoply of biases and distortions, colors and hues, in an unending pattern. There's more to say here, but I want to cover these two paragraphs where they say, okay, wow, so much here. Okay, so now they're describing the multiplicity of requests that we find. The first one is those who rejoice in the channeling of Ra, right? They say, oh, there's a part of the Creator that rejoices at the choice to question Ra regarding the evolution of spirit. Yay, that's all of us. Then there is a seemingly separate portion that wishes a multitudinous answers to a great range of queries for a specific nature. You see, this is the people that want to say, like, can you ask Ra if they can come again in a UFO? Can you ask Ra if I can eat meat? Can you ask Ra if my painting is positive or negative? You see that they're really just interested in all kind of questions. Can you ask the Confederation if I should meditate when I have my period? Can you ask the Confederation if it's okay for me to go to work today? That's the multitudinous answers to a great range of queries for a specific nature. And then there is, of course, the first one, which is the evolution of the spirit. And that's what I'm mostly interested in, this whole raw material, I gotta be honest. The rest is to me kind of entertaining. Yes, I would call it entertaining. Now, they say another seemingly separate group of your peoples would wish this correspondence through this instrument to cease, feeling it to be a negative nature. Does that sound familiar? Listen, I get some comments in my Spanish and English channel. Both, it's funny. But I've gotten people who are fanatic and they say, stop talking about this. This is the devil. You're talking about the devil here. Repent to Christ. That's the beautiful part, when they go into Christ and they say, repent. You need to repent to all your sins. As you do this, they really want to be of service. These people want to be of service, but their fanatical attitude towards their dogma has this desire to seize people from talking about everything. This is how holy wars are waged, if you can think about it. I mean, it's just easy to discern. When you start saying, no, Christ is the one, nobody else. Denounce everything. Repent. Confess. Ding. Confess. So this is the group of people that would wish for this correspondence to cease. Stop talking about Ra. They're the devil. They don't know how. They're only saying because only Christ can be worshipped. My God. Why are we still there? Who knows? It's funny. It's great. Now this is all within space-time. Humans, beautiful humans, right? We just want a multiple array of information. So in the same way, we have those in the etheric planes, right, in the astral, who live there, these entities, angels, demons, ascended masters, negative entities, fully polarized negative entities, fourth, fifth density. Now they have the same thing. Those whose every fiber rejoices at our service, such as the entity of whom you have been speaking, I'm sorry, where are they such? Upon the many other planes of existence, there are those whose every fiber rejoices at your service. Okay, yes, that's there. And then those, such as the negative entity, who would wish to terminate the life of their density, Carla. All are the creator. There is one vast panoply of biases and distortions, colors and hues, in an unending pattern. Everything that moves, including your thoughts, is the creator. I'm sorry, you can't get it out of this. Everything is the creator. But let me finish this before I get into my conclusion. Ra says, in the case of those with whom you as entities and as a group are not in resonance, you wish them love, light, peace, joys, and bid them well. No more than this can you do, for your portion of the Creator is as it is, and your experience and offering of experience to be valuable needs to be more and more a perfect representation of who you truly are. Oh my God, this is beautiful. Whew. Right, I had a spiritual orgasm there. Ra says, just to finish this up, could you then serve a negative entity by offering the instrument's life? It is unlikely that you would find this a true service. Thus, you may see, in many cases, the loving balance being achieved, the love being offered, light being sent, and the service of the service to self-oriented entity gratefully acknowledged while being rejected as not being useful in your journey at this time. Thus, you serve one creator without paradox. God, I'm not going to edit this part. I'm just going to sit here for a couple of seconds. You're going to forgive me. And I'm going to enjoy this. Yes. Yes. What a beautiful answer. Oh man, these two paragraphs. Please, those of you who take notes, I know a lot of you do, write 6711. Last two paragraphs. These two last paragraphs. This applies to us as humans. This applies to us as minds and spirits and whatever else you want to identify yourself with. As long as you're in the creation, this is the attitude, my friends. This is it. Where do I begin? From the beginning. So Ra says, in the case of those with whom you as entities and as a group are not in resonance, man, just wish them love, light, peace, joys. Bid them well. Seriously. You are all here to be different. You're all here to be weirdos. So-called weirdos. You know, the socially inadequates that we all are. We're supposed to be that. This is why order and control snuffles the candle of each and one of us inside. Because we all need to dress the same, behave the same, talk the same topics. Especially now, can't talk about this. You know, it's taboo. Nope, that's not safe for the kids. That's not safe for the world. That's not safe for your grandma. So we're being controlled. But we cannot be controlled. It is only the ignorance in us that believes we can and must be controlled. So we say no to them. We say thank you, but no thank you. You wish them love. You don't say, bastards, trying to control me. I will wage war against you. Orion is right there and saying, yes, yes, tell them. You tell him. Keep fighting. You know, you just say, nope, that's all well and good. You know, when you go to the store and somebody wants to sell you something, and you just gratefully say, no, thank you, I don't need that. You know, it's just not my thing. You don't have to serve them, as Don was asking. Oh yes, I need to be service to others. So if they're selling me this, I need to eat it, right? Because it's service to them. No, you go first. You see? So no more than this can you do, for your portion of the Creator is as it is. And your experience and offering of experience, to be valuable, needs be more and more a perfect representation of who you truly are. So if you keep eating the things or buying the things and eating them, maybe not eating them but buying them, you know, you're not being you. So you have to be yourself, whatever it is that means, you know, that personality that makes you up. You have to be that. Don't try to serve others. That's the people pleasing effect in all of us, because we have compassion. No, we have wisdom too. So Ra gives even, let me tell you something. Ra never asks a question within their statement. Rarely do they do. I know that sometimes they do, but here they even say, so it's just so beautiful. Could you then serve a negative entity by offering the instrument's life? That seems unlikely that you would do that, right? They're telling Don. Like, are you going to be a service to a negative entity by killing Carla? Is that what you want to do? You know, so you may see, in many cases, the loving balance being achieved. How is this loving balance achieved? The love being offered. I give you my love, light sent, and the service of the service's self-oriented entity gratefully acknowledge. While being rejected, no thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for showing me this magical view of myself. But no. Thank you for offering me this piece of food. You know, you go to a party and people offer you food and you say, wow, yeah, I can see myself eating that. But as I see myself eating that, I see that I don't want it. So thank you. But no, I'll pass. You know, you're not pushing the man and saying, how dare you offer me this, you bastard. You don't do that. You know, you just gratefully acknowledge it while being rejected. You know, just, no thank you. As not being useful in your journey at this time. Thus you serve one creator without paradox. You are the creator. You are developing yourself as the creator. Perfect. And with perfection comes conclusion. So this is as far as I'm going to get in this video. I'm definitely going to cover it in 3 parts. So much to say here. Now, what is my opinion on all of this? You see, I believe that Don, Carla, and Jim were channeling information that was not necessary. What? How can you say that, Gabe? I'm going to shut this video, unsubscribe, dislike, leave you a hating comment. No, you're not. Of course not. Why not? This information is not needed. None of it is. This is an information based on positive polarity, on the intention of unity. It's welcome. It's always welcome. What am I getting into? I'm saying that this information is not necessary for the human to achieve enlightenment, which is really all we're seeking. Enlightenment, let me demystify this word because my God, is it mystified unnecessarily. Enlightenment is not some grandiose achievement. Enlightenment is the most basic and essential recognition of your life. We shouldn't even call it enlightenment. We should call it kindergarten stuff. Things we weren't told when we were kids. Seriously, I'm dead serious with this. And my job in this world is to demystify the whole thing about enlightenment. And I'll put myself to the test with anybody who dares to challenge what I'm saying. It is not a mystical thing. Enlightenment is the most basic thing you can ever imagine. But it's so basic. It is so basic that we need to go through complexities to achieve it. And there's not even an achievement there. The Buddha even said, enlightenment there is, but nobody to achieve it. Or nirvana, but nobody to achieve it, you know. The path there is and nobody to travel it. Why would he say that? Why would he say that? Because it's not something you achieve. Something you are. And it is our ignorance to recognize this that is our problem. So I dare say that this whole material, the raw material, is not necessary. Oh, it's a beautiful one, believe me. I mean, you don't have to believe me. It's one of my most influential philosophies because it does account for all the metaphysical multiplicity of things that we have out there, and it becomes so confusing. So guess what? I love it because it takes into account everything. So I love the raw material. I'm not saying it's not necessary, that it's garbage and so on, obviously. I'm saying that it's not necessary. Now, why am I saying this within the context of this session? Because Don, Carla, and Jim were channeling positive information that it was of such high quality that they needed to attract its opposite, and that is the negative entity. Of course, at the beginning they were like, meh, send the 4 density entities, send the minions, send the army. And the 4th Density Army came back and said, Chief, we can't. They're too strong. And so, the chief said, all right, let's go and terminate them. And they fell too. Well, I'm not sure, because Don died. So they might have accomplished something. But so far, as we go through this, they haven't. So, yeah, that's exactly what happens. So you have to accept that when you are being this beacon of light, by getting all of this knowledge or moving through the positive path, then you have to face negative things. You have to go through these negative things, right? But you see, like I said, it's not needed. All you need to do is recognize the true essence of your being. The true essence of your being. That's all you need to accomplish here. Reveal who you are. By doing that, you don't need anything. You don't need, to do ascension rituals and initiations and all of this. You just need to recognize that and live from there. The beautiful thing is that when you live from this unpolarized aspect of yourself, believe it or not, you do have an unpolarized aspect, but it's so buried within you that you don't see it. And when I mean, it's not buried like, it's hard to see, Gabe. It's so obvious to you that you don't see it. Just like you don't see your own eye. You can't see your own eye. The eye is for seeing. So you may think that you have no eyes. Where's my eye? How can I see this? How do I see this? That's our problem right now. We are obviating the obvious. So, from this unpolarized aspect of yourself, you see positive and negative as being one. You don't even have to get into, oh my God, this is affecting me because I'm so positive. Or I'm so negative. This is all happening to me because I'm so negative. Whatever. The unpolarized aspect of yourself is capable of seeing the world without fetters, without attachments to anything. So this is what I wanted to say. Anyhow, there's so much more to say about this, but this is the end of this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for digesting this with me. And yes, we have 2 more parts. It's going to be more psychic attack. So I hope you enjoy it, because that's all we have until the very end, which will brush over the archetypical mind again. Until then, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in part 2 of session 67.